Hi, my name is Jordan, and my topic will be the history of arepas in Venezuela. So here's just a brief history about Venezuela. It was first occupied by food gathering Amerindians, and then it became a Spanish colony after Columbus arrived in 1498. And its name, Venezuela, actually comes from uh, the meaning Little Venice, because when the Spanish explorers arrived, they saw like these houses kind of supported on stilts on the side of lakes, which kind of reminded them of Venice. And it was a part of Gran Colombia after the independence from Spain. And Gran Colombia, it was basically like a country that was it was a combination of like the northern part of Brazil, Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, Ecuador. And then it finally became a sovereign country in 1830, but it was technically independent from Spain since 1811. And they recognized Caracas as their capital. And regarding their cuisine, they have a lot of pre Columbian influence as well as Spanish influence. So now we'll talk a little bit about the geography and the climate of Venezuela. So it's located on the northern tip of South America, next to Brazil and Colombia. And it's actually pretty close to the equator, which means it has a very hot and humid tropical climate, but it gets a little bit more temperate in the highlands. And it has two designated seasons, a wet season and a dry season, which is pretty typical of tropical climates. And Venezuela is actually part of the Orinoco Belt, which actually has the largest proven oil reserves in the world. But due to political instability and the oil or the crude oil being kind of relatively dirty, they have yet to realize the profits from all of that oil. And some fruits that thrive in this tropical climate are bananas, plantains, mangoes, and oranges. And these are a big part of this Venezuelan diet. And also, seafood is pretty popular due to Venezuela's proximity to the sea. So now we'll go over the origins of the arepa. And the arepa is a pre-Columbian food that dates back to over 2,000 years ago. And experts believe that they were first prepared in the area that is now present-day Venezuela and Colombia. And the word arepa comes from the Kumangoto word arepa, which means corn, since they're made of a corn flour. And originally, they were made from home ground maize and cooked on clay slabs. But in the 1950s, pre-cooked arepa flour was invented by Luis Caballero Mejias. And due to this industrialization of the production of arepa flour, they became more popular than ever, allowing people from any part of the country to consume them more easily. And they're a household staple in many Venezuelan homes. So, what makes an arepa? So, an arepa is an unleavened, flat, round patty of maize flour, and it can be cooked in many different ways. It can be grilled, baked, fried, boiled, or steamed, and it can be filled with many different ingredients such as cheese or meat. And after cooking, they're cut open and filled with the choice of filling, which is very specific to Venezuelan arepas. And they can also be eaten at any time of the day. for any meal. So here are some of the most popular Venezuelan arepa fillings. So the first one, which is the simplest, would be the queso, which is just an arepa filled with only cheese. And then we get to the reina pepiada, which is my personal favorite. And it consists of shredded chicken, avocado, mayonnaise, and other ingredients mixed together. And it almost tastes like an avocado chicken salad. And the next one would be la catira, which is just shredded chicken and cheese, la pelua, which is carne mechada, which is just shredded beef and cheese, and la sufrina, which is just a reina pepiada with cheese added. And here are some examples of the arepas that I just mentioned. The first one being the queso, the cheese, or just filled with cheese, the reina pepiada, which is that avocado chicken salad, and la pelua, which is the shredded beef and cheese, and la catira, which is the shredded chicken and cheese. I left out the sofrina because that's basically just reina pepiada with cheese. And now we get to the best part, the arepa rivalry. Colombia versus Venezuela. So the reality is that this rivalry runs super deep, and both countries claim the arepa as their own invention, and it has become a staple dish in both countries. And to them, the arepa is not just a meal, but a cultural icon due to its prevalence in both of their cuisines. But the arepa is a pre-Hispanic food that predates both countries' existence. So no country could technically claim it as their own invention. And they differ in both countries, and they each have their own defining characteristics. And now we'll get into the characteristics of a Colombian arepa. And in Colombia, the arepa is most commonly consumed during breakfast as a side dish, but technically it can be eaten at all hours of the day, but breakfast is when they're most commonly eaten. And Colombian arepas tend to be thinner and sweeter than Venezuelan arepas. And in regards to the filling, they tend to be more simple and most commonly filled with just cheese. And instead of being cut open and filled like Venezuelan arepas, they're usually stuffed. And when they're cooked, they have a crunchier texture. And now we'll get into the characteristics of a Venezuelan arepa. And a majority are arepas rellenas, which means they're stuffed with fillings. And these tend to be more of a complete meal rather than just a side dish, due to them filling them with much more filling and they're much more substantial. And when they're cooked, they tend to be thicker and they're more commonly split open and filled. And they're filled with meat, cheese, sauces, and many other fillings. But technically, they could be filled with anything, but these are just the most popular choices. And Venezuelan arepas have a softer texture. And here's the verdict. This might be controversial, but I prefer Venezuelan arepas. But they both have their respective places in their cuisines. And it all depends on personal preference and the time of the day. And both are staple dishes in their respective country. But the beautiful thing about arepas is they're very flexible, and you could fill them with anything that you have on hand. Although Venezuelan arepas and Colombian arepas differ in taste and texture, they both come from the same origin. And overall, I think they're both equally great options, and I recommend them both. Thank you.